Welcome back to all my food warriors. I know it's been a little while since we've connected over YouTube, but it's with the start of a new soccer season. Things are always very busy for us, and so now that things are well underway, thought we'd come back and get back to the program here. So for all you competitive athletes who are looking for healthy things to put in your body, as well as busy families who are looking for meal ideas, quick, healthy meal ideas for midweek. Again, this is the place for you. So today's recipe is Risotto Milanese. This is risotto from the city of Milan in the north of Italy, characterized by its golden hue, and all of that is brought about by just a pinch of saffron in our risotto. Don't be put off by the fact that saffron is a slightly exotic ingredient. Don't worry about that at all. It brings a very unique flavor to the dish. It brings a beautiful golden color to the dish. But risotto is very approachable as a weekday meal. The only thing we have to remember is when it's ready, we got to sit down and eat. Risotto does not do well sitting around waiting for people to get to the table. When it's ready, everybody at the table and ready to go. So I'm going to do things slightly different today. I have a couple of things that I am going to add to this dish that are not quite traditional, but you know what? I have them kicking around the house, and I think they would be a great addition to this dish. So we're going to start things off with a little bit of coppa. This is just a little bit of the butt of the coppa that I have kicking around my fridge. I do like to use a little bit of cured meat in my risotto. I believe it brings a great deal of savoriness to the dish. It's not a big piece. This is about 150 grams overall. This is a cured pork product. It's part of the shoulder of the pig. It's salt cured, air dried, an absolute specialty of Italian salumi. I just have a little bit of the butt kicking around my fridge. If you had a little bit of pancetta, maybe a couple of extra slices of bacon, a little bit of the trimmings of the prosciutto, whatever you have kicking around, completely optional. If you don't want to put this in, again, completely optional as an item to put in there. I just find it gives a good bit of savoriness to the dish. It brings a little bit of salt to the dish, and I think it adds a little bit of uniqueness, but completely optional. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut this into 3 thick pieces, and I'm just going to cut this up, again, very thin. I'm not putting this in as a protein. This is entirely just the flavoring. And keep in mind, 150 grams of coppa. This is going to feed easily 6 people. So again, this is not meant to be added in as a protein. This is completely as just an additional flavoring and completely optional. Like I said, it's not traditional, but it's my kitchen and I like it. So by all means, when you're making something in your kitchen, these recipes are meant to be, a suggestion. If there's something that you have on hand or something that you like that you think would be a good addition, by all means, feel free to experiment and put down in the comments what you did and if it worked. There we are. We're just going to give this very fine dice. Again, we don't want big pieces of meat in our final product. All we want here are just very fine, just a very fine dice. So we're going to start by searing off and just rendering out some of the fat from the coppa in our pan. There we are. And that'll give a good start to our dish. What I've got here beside me is a couple of liters of good quality chicken stock. If you are purchasing chicken stock and you don't make your own at home, that's fine. My recommendation would be to buy something that has a low sodium content. That way you can control the amount of salt that you put into the dish. So we're just going to get this, again, just chopped up nice and fine. There we are. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get the heat going on my pan here. Now, when we're making risotto, it's important to have a vessel here, a pot or a pan that's wider than it is tall, because we do want to have a little bit of evaporation while we are cooking. And we want to make sure that we have an opportunity for all of the stock and all of the flavorings to soak in with our rice. There we are. just around the bottom of the pan. There we are. And just add a little bit of oil just to get this started. There we are. All right, and we will let that go. Now, we've got our vegetables. I've got one decent sized onion. We're just going to cut this up again into medium-sized dice. As this cooks in a moist environment, it will soften, so we don't need to cut this too fine. There we are. Maybe something like a 1/4-inch dice, I think would be good for this application. There we are. And we'll just get the end in there as well. Oh, just the smell of that, absolutely phenomenal. There we are. And we'll just give this a quick chop here as well. All right. Just keep this here on our board until we're ready. We've got some other vegetables to add in here as well, but before we do, let's just get our copa or our pancetta, whatever meat you happen to have that we're going to use to flavor our end product. We'll just give that a quick stir. We don't want any of this to burn. We don't want any of this to get any color. All we want is for some of that fat just to start to melt in and mix with the olive oil. So I've got a couple of cloves of garlic here. I'm just going to give these guys a little bit of a squash before we cut these up nice and fine. And remember, as we're slicing these up, pinch the blade of the knife so that we have control. Tuck those fingers in, get those fingers out of the way. There we are. Alright, so we've got our onions, we've got our garlic ready to go. Just lower the heat here a little bit. Oh, the smell of this is just phenomenal. So we are almost there with our copa. I do have a couple of stalks of celery here as well. And all I want to do, these have been washed and trimmed. I just want to cut these down the middle a couple of times just so that they're, give or take, about the same size as the onion. This is all about balance of flavors, balance of textures. There we are. So we've got our two stalks of celery here ready to go, and we're just going to cut those up again, medium dice. Let's move these over, and I'm just going to give my copa one more stir. There we are. Before we add in our vegetables. Oh, just absolutely fantastic. There we are. So let's get back to our celery here. There we are. Perfect. So now our copa is nicely rendered. So what we're going to do now is we're just going to take our board here and we're going to get all of our vegetables right into the pan. All of our onions, our garlic and our celery. And all we want to do is just sweat this down. We don't want to get any color on these vegetables. We just want them to soften. We want them to become beautifully translucent. And we just want to sweat these down a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give these a quick stir. There we are. Now, important to remember as we're seasoning, the copa was salt cured, so it does have a little bit of salt in it. So we want to take that into consideration when we are seasoning. So we're going to give this just a light salting. And I've got some freshly ground black pepper here as well. And normally I would put a fresh chili, but I don't have a little bit of chili, so this time we're just going to leave that out. But if you do like it a little bit spicy, by all means, feel free to throw a little chili pepper in there, maybe some dried chili flakes. This time we are going to keep it on the lighter side. So we'll just increase the heat a little bit. Oh, it's the smell of those aromatics, fantastic. So we're just going to check our stock quickly. Now our stock is right up to the boil. So we are going to take the heat right down, just leave it at simmer. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create a little bit of a saffron tea that I'm going to allow to sit. Let the flavor and color start to come out of the saffron, so when it's time to use it, we'll be ready to go. So for those of you who have not used saffron before, let me just grab a few of these strands. There we are. So this here is saffron. This is essentially the stamen of the crocus flower. These grow in Spain, they grow all over the Mediterranean, and in some places in the Middle East. Quite strong in terms of flavor, very unique in terms of flavor, but they provide an absolutely fantastic color. All you really need is a pinch, and like I said, this will feed easily 6 people. So I'm going to put this in my ramekin here. Close this up for the next time. Now saffron is a little on the expensive side, I will give you that, but you really don't use a lot, and it provides a very, very unique flavor profile when you are using it in your cooking. So what I'm going to do, as I'm sweating these down, I'm going to take a little bit of my hot stock, and this is a little warm, so we're going to make sure we use a towel here. There we are. And all I'm going to do is take a little bit of this hot stock, and I'm going to pour it over my saffron. There we are. Maybe about a cup of stock. And I will just leave this here on my board to sit, and like I said, to create that saffron almost like a tea. And the color and the flavor will start to leach out into that hot liquid, so that when we pour it into our risotto, it's already got a head start, and it's going to start to flavor and color our dish very quickly. So I will give this another 2 or 3 minutes, and I'll be back. So we are back. It's been about 3 or 4 minutes. Our vegetables are softening nicely. Our pan's been going here on medium heat. So what we want to do now, while our vegetables have softened, is we want to add in our rice. So this is 500 grams of Italian, what they call a risotto rice. There's really 3 kinds of rice that Italians traditionally use to make risotto. The first one is arborio. That's ubiquitous, found pretty well everywhere. Carnaroli, which this is my personal favorite, and vialone nano, which is found really in the region of Venice and local to that region's risottos. But Carnaroli, I find, makes a more consistent risotto. You get a beautiful starch content, makes it very creamy, but I find the rice cooks more evenly and more consistently. Just my preference. So I've got 500 grams of Carnaroli rice. I'm just going to add that right to our pan. Now the rice is not washed at all. I want all of that surface starch to thicken my risotto. So I'm just going to give this a quick stir. What I want is for the rice to toast in the fat from the olive oil and from the colpa in the bottom of the pan. So I want to toss this around literally for about a minute. And it won't be long before you start to smell the nuttiness from the rice as it toasts in the fat and as it starts to absorb the flavor from all of the aromatics that we have in this pan, from our onions, from our garlic, from our celery, and obviously from our colpa as well. And we are, we'll just give this a quick stir. We want to make sure that nothing is sticking to the bottom, but we want to allow the rice to toast in here as well. So we're just going to give this just a couple of seconds before we stir it again. We have a little bit of white wine as well, so we're going to add that in next. This is about, I'd say, 5 ounces of a nice dry Italian white wine, Pinot Grigio, Soave, Orvieto, whatever you happen to have on hand. Even a dry white vermouth will work in a pinch. So we're going to give this a quick stir, just allow this to toast. And what Italians have a saying about the rice that they cultivate in the Po Valley in the north of the country. When they make risotto, the rice is born in water and it dies in wine. So here we are. We'll have our white wine. We'll just add that right to the pan as well. And we're going to continue to give this a stir. What the wine gives this dish is a little bit of acidity. The alcohol is going to cook off, but the fruitiness and the acidity of the wine will stay behind. It's very subtle. It's not a whole lot of wine, but the alcohol will evaporate. So if we're worried about that, don't worry about that. This is fine for people of all ages. So we will just let this go, and we will let the pan dry out before we start to add our stock. There we are. Wow. The smell is absolutely phenomenal. So what we will do is we will turn the heat off on our stock here. Our stock is well up to temperature. When we are making risotto, we want to remember we never want to add cold stock to a hot pan. We bring the stock up to temperature. That way we're adding hot stock to a hot pan, and we don't stop the cooking only to have it, heat up again as the pan heats up. We want to maintain that heat in the risotto, cook it evenly, and that way the end product will be much better, much more consistent. All right, so we have literally no liquid left in the pan. The pan is dry. So before we add our stock, I'm going to go back to that saffron tea that I made earlier. You see that beautiful golden color? We're just going to add that right to our pan. And because this is saffron and it's a little on the pricey side, I want to rinse that out because I don't want to waste any of it. There we are. There we are. Perfect. And we will just add a little more stock to our risotto. Really what we want to do is add maybe a ladle and a half at a time, and then we want to give this a stir. And as we stir, the starch from the rice, as the rice is rubbing against each other, as we stir, this will ultimately leach out into the liquid, and that's what will create the creamy texture of a risotto. There's no cream, there's no butter, there's none of that in here. This is the traditional method, and if we do it right, we shouldn't need any of that stuff. So we will just continue to give this a stir. There we are. Every 30 seconds or so, and this should be coming up to the boil fairly rapidly. What we want to do is let the liquid in this get absorbed by the rice as the pan starts to dry out. As you're stirring either with your rubber spatula, your wooden spoon, or whatever implement you're using, and you start to see a dry bottom of the pan, just add another ladle and a half or so of stock until we get to the bottom, and we should be pretty well there. So I will see you in about 2 or 3 minutes. All right, it's been about 3 or 4 minutes. I've added 1 serving of stock already, and as I do, I keep stirring literally every 30 minutes or so. I want to make sure I'm moving that rice around, that we have nothing sticking to the bottom of our pan. We're on a good solid medium heat here, and I'm always looking to see if my pan is drying out. That way I can add another little bit of stock. Now, we do have another twist to our risotto here. I happened to be out in the garden a little bit earlier, and I've got some Swiss chard growing, and it just so happened that, Swiss chard looked good, time to be picked, so I'm going to add some of that Swiss chard into our risotto. Is it traditional? No. Am I concerned about that? Absolutely not. This is stellar stuff. Really, nutritionally, this is a powerhouse. This is great from the point of view of helping you regulate your weight, helping you regulate your blood sugar, and it's great for heart health as well. Plus, it's got a ton of vitamins and fiber in there as well, so we're just going to add this to our dish. Again, as a vegetable supplement, bulk it up a little bit more, but it actually lightens the dish because you've got the ratio of rice to vegetables becomes less. And so what we do is we have a much lighter risotto. It's easier to digest, but it also provides a little bit more variety. Do I need to add it in? No, but you know what? I have the opportunity to do that because it is in my garden, readily available, ready to be picked. And so we're just going to take the opportunity to add it in this case. So pan is getting a little dry. We're just going to top that up, give it a stir. There we are. And then we will let this to bubble away as we deal with our Swiss chard. If you've never seen Swiss chard before, this is what it looks like. This is a variety called rainbow chard. The stalks of the chard are different colors. Some of these are pinks and purples and oranges. Some are light yellow, really almost white. But the leaves are very, very tender, and even these stalks at this age and at this size, very, very tender. In a hot pot of risotto, these will literally take maybe a minute or two to cook. So I'm going to prepare these now so that when they're ready to add in, it's just dump in the pot, stir it up, and we are ready to go. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my first bunch here, and this is a good bunch of Swiss chard that I have here. All I've done is I've given it a quick wash, and I'm just going to cut this up just really fine in ribbons, and this will cook very quickly as soon as it hits that hot pot. So all I'm trying to do here is just cut these up in relatively thin ribbons. Once you get to the stalks as well, just cut those up. They're perfectly edible. They provide a nice bit of texture to our dish as well. And so I'm going to add these in. Nice bit of color, nice bit of texture, nice bit of fiber. Like I said, the whole plant here is edible. There we are. So that's our first bunch. Again, we're going to give this a nice stir, make sure that we have nothing sticking to the bottom. Oh, the smell of this is absolutely gorgeous. Risottos can be made at all times of the year, and really you vary what's in season when you're making them. A beautiful risotto of springtime vegetables, beautiful young zucchini flowers, fresh peas, can't beat that. In the winter, in the fall, mushrooms, a little more protein, some seafood maybe, just absolutely fantastic. Fantastic to add variety to your diet in a very healthy way. So we'll get our second bunch here. And again, we're just going to slice these up in relatively thin ribbons. The green part of this will wilt as soon as it hits that hot pan, and the stalks will soften as they cook. Put this guy here so we can see what we're doing. There we are. There we are. So we'll just move this guy out of the way, and we will get back to our pan here. So there we are. See, things are starting to dry up in the pan a little bit. So we want to make sure we get a little more stock in here. And literally, with my last addition of stock, that's when I'm going to put these greens in there. We're going to keep them vibrant. We're going to keep a nice bit of crunch, nice texture. We don't want to cook these down to the point where they're completely mushy and they lose their texture. We want to keep that flavor vibrant, keep that color vibrant, and keep a little bit of texture in there as well. Provides for a much more interesting end product. So there we are. We'll just let this go. I think I've probably got 2 more additions of stock here in this pan, so I will just let this go. Keep stirring every couple of minutes. Risotto, literally from start to finish, should take you no more than maybe 25 minutes, and that includes the cooking time and your prep time. So great idea for a weeknight meal. Hope you try this and incorporate it as part of your repertoire. I will see you in about 7 or 8 minutes. All right, it has been about 7 or 8 minutes. We are just about ready to add in our final dose of stock. Now is when we're going to add in our beautiful Swiss chard. So what I'm going to do, hopefully without making too much of a mess, we are going to get our our chard rather, and we are just going to slide that right into our pot. There we are. Stems and all. Oh, love this. I have done this with Swiss chard. I have done this with kale. I have done this with, if you happen to grow Brussels sprouts and they have those big outer leaves, same thing. I just take, I don't quite use the big stalk on those because it tends to be a little bit woody, but I use the green part of the leaves, and I've added those into risottos as well, and they are absolutely spectacular. I've had them with pasta. Great way to add vegetables to your diet, and a great way to use up parts of the plant that are growing in the garden. So what I'm going to do now is just take the rest of my stock, add that in. There we are. And we're going to mix this up. Oh, I wish you could smell this. Absolutely phenomenal. There we are. And again, we're going to mix that around, give that a stir, make sure there's nothing sticking to the bottom of our pot. And now this, with the heat that's in the pan, the rest of that stock, we're going to give this probably another 3 or 4 minutes, and then we should be ready to take that right to the table. So same as we started, we're going to stir this every 20-30 seconds, get the last of that starch out of the rice, have the liquid mostly absorbed, but we don't want this too thick. So we will be back as soon as we are ready to take this to the table, about 3 or 4 minutes. We are back, and our risotto is pretty much there. It's absolutely stunning. Now, this is a very versatile dish. Because we're having this as one complete meal, one pot, one meal, if I didn't put any of the coppa in, any of that cured meat, or any of the additional Swiss chard, I could always use this as a base for a nice ossobuco, maybe a nice braised lamb shank, nice stewed piece of meat with a bit of gravy. This would be a fantastic bed for that. Or, in this case, you can dress it up and it can be a meal unto itself. But very, very versatile recipe. I do hope you try it. It's absolutely phenomenal. So we are pretty well there. The stock has been absorbed into the rice. Beautiful, vibrant colors in this pot. Nice, intense greens. I think we are there. So I don't like to cook my risotto to the point where it's very, very thick and stodgy. I've been to restaurants where they've put it in molds and try to stack it up, and it doesn't taste the same. The way I like to do it is in the traditional method, which we call alonda, on the wave. And you'll see that as we serve it in our bowl, what this looks like. But before we do, we're going to cut the heat. We're going to take this right off the stove. And before I put this into my bowl, I have about 100 grams of freshly grated Parmigiano Reggiano cheese. This is not the stuff that comes in the green container pre-grated. We can do better than that. We can do a lot better than that. Big wedge of cheese. It looks like a lot, but it's been grated on a microplane, so it gets really, really fluffy and aerated. But this is only about 100 grams of cheese, and this is used as a seasoning just to finish the risotto. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw that in there. I'm going to get all of this out. And all this does is it adds a beautiful savoriness and a nice creaminess to the end product. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to stir this in, what we call mantecare, just to get the cheese completely worked through the risotto. And it gives it a beautiful sheen. It gives it a beautiful saltiness, a beautiful nuttiness, a beautiful savoriness. It's just absolutely stunning. There we are. And you see this risotto, as I move the pot, it jiggles. This is what we mean by alonda. We don't want this. We don't want it overdone and thick and stodgy where you can cut it with a knife and a fork. I think that's a little overdone. This, in my opinion, is the traditional, the classic, and the best way to eat risotto. So we are going to get all of our Swiss chard off of our spatula here. We're going to get our bowl and our ladle, and this this is what I'm talking about. Look at that. Those beautiful ribbons of Swiss chard. Incidentally, that's what the Italians call la bietola. Very healthy. This is really the sign of early summer. It's one of the first crops that are usually ready in the garden. Absolutely Fantastic. Now what I like to do, just gonna move this out of the way here for a minute. What I like to do, I always have a good bottle of unfiltered olive oil kicking around the house. I use it for salads, and I use it to drizzle over pastas and risottos. This is one of those times where it absolutely has to be done. So we're just gonna give this just a little drizzle of olive oil. We're gonna get our spoon. Now this is what I'm talking about. Absolutely spectacular. So we're just gonna go right from around the outer edges because this is just off the heat, so it is hot. You get that beautiful saltiness from the copa, beautiful silkiness from the Swiss chard, a little crunch from the stems. It's one of those dishes that it's very complex. It's very warming from the inside out. Unbelievably healthy. Do give it a try. This is Coach Joe. Do like and subscribe to the channel. Share it with your friends. And please, if you are getting any value out of this, please leave some comments down below. Love reading them and love responding. We will see you on the next one.